Hi everyone, welcome back to the land of low friction. And yes, you may notice today, slightly different background, more work's going on in the garden. And so I've moved down to the cinema, which is underground, pretty insulated here. So who knows, if it sounds even better, let me know. I may even sort of do some more sort of videos from down here as opposed to just in the office, but we'll see how we go. All right, today, just covering two quick topics. One is going to be on updates to the cost to run modeling. May not sound like it's the most exciting topic in the world, but it's sort of fairly important in that before I could sort of delve into trying to get to the backlog of detail reviews for lubricants that I've tested but not yet completed the detail reviews, I really needed to just make the updates and changes to the cost to run modeling so that when I'm going through those lubricants and comparing as to how they go to their, I guess, sort of key competitors in their demographic, I've needed to get sort of more accurate data for that. So I'll update what changes have been made to the modeling and why. And then also I'll be going through just I guess a mini channel update. So what to expect, hopefully, with regards to what I'm going to be trying to do with my level of YouTubing, which to date, again, thank you so much for everyone that's been really supportive and very kind over all of the feedback. But it's something I do know I'm not a natural at this, and I rush it because I never get time to properly prep to present or script anything. So I just tap them out as best I can when I can in sort of a pretty short window. However, I do need to try to make some changes to what I'm doing to, because at the end of the day, this is going to be the medium where I'm going to be mostly trying to get the information that we're getting out to everybody who's interested. So I'll be trying to do a couple of things going forwards from here, see if we can get my terrible YouTubing skills better. Only time will tell, but at least I'm sort of committing to see if we can at least improve a bit, and thank you for your patience as always. Alrighty, here we go, the moment you've all been waiting for, but maybe never even knew it. Talking about cost to run modeling and extrapolating data. It just does not get any better than that on a Friday afternoon. All right, so in the past, I used a different and quite blunt extrapolation for when a lubricant did not test very well, which means that it reached the wear rate allowance for the test quite early on into the test. So we can take, for instance, we can see here that's a muck-off hydrodynamic is at a total of 126.5% of the allowed wear rate, which is the normal 0.5% recommended placement mark for a chain. So it's reached that by the end of block 2, which is 2,000 kilometers into the test. So we've got for the main 5,000 kilometers of the test that I use for the extrapolations. In the main test, the block 6 is kind of a little bit separate. So there's really been 3 blocks there that I have to fill in the data for because we've stopped the test at 2,000 kilometers. So wherever you see in the whereby block that the square is colored in red, that means that I have extrapolated the data for that wear rate for that block because the lubricant test has been stopped at the point. In the early days, I did try to push some tests on, but it just gets weird once things get really bad. For one, the worst lubricants get pretty scary chain suck, and pushing them on when they're really struggling. I did have one case where it snapped the hanger because the chain suck was so bad and so continuous that it just fatigued the hanger and snapped it. And that gets really exciting for the test machine and couplings and everything. So I don't push the tests on. It also can actually just get, which for a bunch of reasons I won't go into, just difficult some of the measuring, believe it or not, once you push things past a certain point. So I pretty much just stop the tests once they do exceed, in a particular block, the test wear allowance. And from that point, we'll extrapolate the rest of the data. And now previously it was quite blunt. So what we're doing now is that now that more tests have been completed over time, so I've got more data to basically see what tends to happen between one block and the next by data type. Before it was all just off the I guess the testing as a whole. Now for a lubricant, basically if it is a wet lubricant or a wax strip lubricant, I'm really able to extrapolate better what is likely to have happened should the test have continued based on what's happened with lubricants where we've continued to be able to get data from and what the changes have been block by block. So if anything now, the test or the extrapolated data on the lubricants is kinder than it was before, because the extrapolation data is based from lubricants as an average that have been able to move through to the next blocks. So as a for instance, if that's not making any sense, we can have a look here that basically, let's have a look at sort of block 3. So for wet lubricants, the average wear rate for all wet lubricants tested to date in block 2, which is the dry contamination block, is 38.4%. And the average wear rate for all wet lubricants tested in block 3, which is the block that follows, has been 32.9%. So I'm basically able to use now an extrapolation of, they're on average dropping by 5.5%. So I'm applying that to the wet lubricants that have not been able to do or be tested through into block 3. And then for block 4, we can see that all wet lubricants have returned a wear rate result of 38.4%, and that's in block 2. And then in block 4, it has been 49.6%. So the change between how they performed in the dry contamination block versus the wet contamination block has been basically plus 11.2% more wear in the wet contamination block. So that extrapolation is applied to the lubricants that did not make it that far into the test. They're having that average added to their block 2 result. And so on for the remaining blocks. We're basically able to use the data average from the lubricants that made it through those blocks to apply to that. So hopefully that all makes sort of sense, and what that means is that it really hasn't changed the cost to run for lubricants where we are not using extrapolated data, but it does change the cost to run for the lubricants where we are using extrapolated data, because that extrapolated data has changed. So comparatively, their cost to run has changed. All right, now this is the point where I do need to talk about, I guess, still an issue that we have with the cost to run data. And I don't have an easy solve for that as yet, but I'll be really happy to take any suggestions and ideas, because I'll be looking to try to make that better in the future. And at the moment, we are a little bit stuck. So I'll run through that now. I'm just going to do a quick pause here. All right, so in a nutshell, for the modeling, obviously the rules have to be applied the same. So where it falls down is that, so what we're doing is we are classing that when the chain hits 0.5%, the test is stopped. And in the real world, in a perfect world, when your chain hits 0.5%, that is when you replace it. Now we know from a whole lot of, I guess, field experience and just time in the industry that we know some general rules of thumb. We know that in general, if you replace a chain by 0.5% for an Ultegra cassette, you will typically get a second chain through that cassette. However, typically for a Dura-Ace cassette, because especially the larger 6 cogs, they're made of a titanium alloy, they're quite soft wearing. It is quite frequent that even if you are good and replace your chain by 0.5%, you in all likelihood will not get a second chain through a Dura-Ace cassette. So steel cassettes, typically yes. Titanium alloy and other alloy cassettes, typically no. So the rules for that we've set are basically that somebody would replace their chain at 0.5% wear, as they should, and that in the case of the cost run modeling for the Dura-Ace group set, that they would also need to replace the cassette. So there's the cost of the chain, there's the cost of the cassette. I've been on the other side a bit more generous. So I've just from my own experience, if you're replacing chains by 0.5%, you should be able to get 6 chains through a set of chain rings. So chain rings should be very wear durable in general if you are using A, a good lubricant, and B, replacing the chains when you should. So the rule of thumb basically that we have for the modeling is that chains replaced at 0.5%. A Dura-Ace cassette is replaced at the same time. However, you would get 6 chains through your chain rings before you would need to replace those. So the cost of the chain rings is basically 1/6 of the cost of those chain rings per chain that is worn. So for the modeling for the off-road, so the dry off-road contamination wear modeling and the wet contamination. I'm basing that on GRX cassettes. It's the same. We're saying, also GRX group set, we're saying replacing a chain at 0.5% wear, you're able to get 2 chains per cassette because they're steel cassettes, and still 6 chains per set of chain rings. So on the surface, that's all cool, but unfortunately, it has a fairly glaring issue, which I'll show you shortly. And by shortly, obviously, I mean now. Why would I not show it to you now? So, all right, we can sort of see, we have a look at the modeling for the Dura-Ace 11 speed, all kind of looks, I guess, normal up here. So we're getting some great low cost to run because of the super low wear rates for the top lubricants tested. But things start to get pretty wacky once we get down to the poor lubricants tested. So, I mean, one issue obviously is we have either extrapolated or heavily extrapolated data. So if it's extrapolated, that means that I've basically used that for typically, say, the last couple of blocks. If it's heavily extrapolated, I'm pretty much needed to use extrapolated data from basically block 2 onwards. But so the thing is, where it looks, you know, a bit sort of batshit crazy is that, you know, nobody running these lubricants down in, say, the bottom third of the table are going to be spending this much on their bike per 10,000 kilometers to run, you know, or their drivetrain, I should say. What's going to happen in real life is that obviously they're not going to be replacing their chains at 0.5%, because if they were checking them and seeing how fast they got to 0.5%, they sure as heck wouldn't be using any of these lubricants down here. What would be happening, obviously, is they're going to be running those chains till they're very worn, you know, well past 0.5. In many cases, you know, well past 1, even 1.5, even 2%. You'd see come through the workshop. And then they would be replacing a cassette at the time, and possibly a set of chain rings as well, because that would be doing a lot of damage to the chain rings. However, that's all going to add up to, you know, say, you know, maybe around the sort of $700-800 mark, as opposed to this cost here. So the reality is that, you know, a person in, say, mid-table is quite possibly replacing 1 chain and 1 cassette per 10,000 kilometers, and a person down in the bottom third of the table is also going to be replacing 1 chain and 1 cassette within that time. They may also be replacing a set of chain rings. So the real world cost of difference per 10,000 kilometers for that cyclist might simply just be the set of chain rings, not factoring in, you know, differences in lubricant cost. So that's kind of what's going to happen in the real world, not these big crazy figures down here. But, you know, the modeling can't really effectively work like that. The modeling has to work based on the rules that we set in place for the modeling, which is, here's our wear rate data, and if you were replacing your chains at 0.5%, this is how many components you would be purchasing at that wear rate, and this is how much those components would be costing, and this is how much it is costing you. So even though the real world cost to run difference is not going to be that, because people are just simply on these products going to be running really crappy, very inefficient, horribly worn chains and cassettes and chain rings for a long time before they replace them in general. What's costing them is obviously efficiency and how nice their bike is to ride, as opposed to what's going on up here. But the cost to run difference at the end of the day for many still is very real, in terms of there is going to be quite a notable difference to one's back pocket if they're using lubricants up here versus using lubricants down here, because they're still at least going to typically have, say, a set of chain rings that they're replacing that much faster. Typically, say, you know, either within or just after that 10,000 kilometers if they're on a very poor lubricant choice and needing to replace the chain. So that's still a good, you know, depending on your chain rings, a good few $100 to $600 or more dollars, you know, that's in your pocket that you can use to spend on other fun things, as opposed to having burnt through some drivetrain components. So, but what we've got, so I do have a note that covers that in the modeling spreadsheet, but my fear is still that a lot of people will look at the cost to run modeling, look at the numbers at the top and think that's all pretty cool, that's very interesting, and start to get down here and go, hang on a minute. If you're telling me that somebody running these lubricants are going to be spending, you know, over $3,000 per 10,000 kilometers riding, I don't believe it. And this is all a bit crazy. So I've got that explained there because yes, you are correct, that would be crazy. But again, we have to apply the modeling rules to be able to basically compare apples to apples with, we're taking the wear rates from the test, and those component wear rates and those component costs are what are extrapolated directly calculated out into here. And it does also factor in the lubricant usage cost and the usage rate from the test as well. So it's all in there. We just do have, a bit of an issue here. That hopefully now makes sense to you, that you've listened to my rambled explanation on. But again, I'll be looking for some kind of solve as to what to do, so that just person A who comes across zero friction cycling has a look at the cost to run data, that doesn't think that the data's all lost the plot. So I need to try to get something better than just this and this video here going on, but I'm not entirely sure what that next step should be. So any suggestions, sing out. Put them in the comments or email through. And but that is the cost to run modeling update, and that will now enable me to get to. So I have backlogged to complete detail reviews for lubricants tested. So I'm a fair bit behind. Session components, Bow Shield T9 aerosol, Silka Synergy, Finish Line Dry, the red bottle, or the red top bottle, Wolf Tooth WT1, I get a lot of emails about that one. Demontech, I get a lot of emails about Demontech, it almost needs its own little video. Muck-Off C3 Ceramic, Press to Cycle 1, that's going to be a belter. And not even on here because the data was just so horrendous. I couldn't even feasibly extrapolate it, but the Finish Line ceramic wax, it just about wore through the entire chain in the first 1,000 kilometer clean block, which is just unreal. And that was applying it like buggery, basically. It was just, I went through pretty much the entire bottle in that 1,000 kilometers and still almost wore through the chain. That can just about constitute the detail review for that one. So fair few, and obviously more on test at the moment, and some sort of fairly high profile ones, so there'll be some great reviews to get to. So a lot to get done. That had to get done first, and stay tuned for, there'll be a whole bunch of detail reviews coming out, which will be by video now, as opposed to my far too long documents that about 0.1% of the population would read. Okay, and just to wrap here, quick channel update. So the plan from here, so again, apologies, I just don't get time to script stuff, so I know that was still rambly as normal, just to run you through the update. Can't promise when that is going to change for me, because it is just going to be me ripping out updates when I can. The general channel update though is the videos now I'm going to be trying to basically run through a rotation of a quick update on something, because there's always a stack of updates in the land of low friction. But I'll make that a relatively short one, so I'll be really aiming for sub 20 minutes. A detail review, not entirely sure how long they'll be yet. It's going to be pretty lubricant dependent, but I'm going to try to aim for around the 20 to 30 tops, unless there's a bit of a deep dive. And then there will be the longer topics. So for instance, there's still getting a lot of emails about sort of really what to do for the long extreme events, multi-day stage race, and so on. So I touched on that a little bit in the recent, is wax any good in the wet video. However, the lubrication plan for if you have a multi-day stage race or a really long extreme event like Unbound that's about to take place this weekend, and there's a whole bunch of others, that really needs its own video, and that one will be a bit of a longer one, because there's just, again, the type of event varies a lot from something that's quite long and on road, like say Race Across America, to a multi-day stage mountain bike race like a Cape Epic, to a single day flag to flag event like an Unbound. Conditions, lubricant preferences and options. So there's just, by the time we sort of step through a bunch of those and the variables and your options, it is just going to be a bit of a longer one. So, but in general, expect more of a quick bite one for me, which is going to be around the sort of 20-minute mark, a detail review, and a deeper dive topic that requires a longer one still to come out. So that's going to be the hopeful plan. So we'll see how that goes. But again, thanks for this one. Hope you all have a great weekend. Hope you get to check out a bit of Unbound. I have my fingers and toes crossed for a bit of a local race legend, Matt Bird from SA, and he's been sort of with ZSC for a very, very long time in terms of great customer, and having his entire team off on much smarter, low friction ways of running things, especially in cyclocross and gravel. So yeah, he's over there for a good crack at the Unbound. So yeah, I will be keeping my eye on and hoping that he has a great event and hopefully no incidences or mechanicals, which is the big thing for Unbound. So fingers crossed. At least he will be very low friction. Have no doubt about that. All right, thanks everyone, and I will catch you on the next one.